Good evening. Welcome to the August 21st, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this day and thanks for the blessings you've given each and every one of us here. We ask that you continue to bless us this evening as we work through the issues facing the city of Troy, whether that's from the city council table or in the audience as a member of the city or out in the community elsewhere. We ask that you continue to be with our public safety members, our first responders, police, fire, EMS, our public works department. Please keep them safe as we know they are working so hard to keep us safe. We ask that you continue to bless us to make wise decisions from this table with open ears and open hearts, and we ask that you be with all of us in the city of Troy, granting us peace and love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The August 21st, 2023 Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. I'll ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton? Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
We have a quorum present this evening. First up are certificates of recognition and special presentations. C1, Site 11, First Community Engagement Update. That'll be presented by our Public Works Director, Kurt Bovensteep, and Tori Mathis, our Communications and Engagement Director. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us today. So first, I want to thank all of you guys for this. My name is Tori Mathis. I'm the Communications and Engagement Director for the City of Troy. I'm new here, so I want to present that as well to not only you guys, but also to the crowd that's here with us. And I just kind of want to start off by talking about what community engagement is and go from there and why I'm here with the city. You know, a lot of what we do at local government level impacts our residents on a day-to-day basis. And part of that process and more of a newer age concept, I know governments have always been doing it, but now we're kind of really promoting that and prioritizing that as our first interaction with residents in our community, and that's community engagement. And it's a process by which we involve our community and our residents at the ground level for decision-making purposes so that you guys remain informed about how to proceed when you're making a decision or a policy choice. But then also really from our side as administration is to build those relationships and build those connections with our community. A lot of these things that we're working on, not only that you guys are making decisions on, but what we're doing on a day-to-day basis impact their daily lives. And that's why we have these sessions. So I really kind of want to celebrate the wins today. One, we had over my first session with you guys as a community engagement opportunity, we had over 30 people show up during a summer event, which is pretty huge. And as you can see behind us, we have quite a crowd that we encouraged people to come to because this is why we do what we do, just to kind of hear their feedback as well as their thoughts on the process. And that's what we're going to continue moving forward with as we move through our community engagement with Site 11, but also moving forward with all of our new projects, new policy implementation, and so on. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that and go over what happens next. You know, we had our first session last couple weeks ago. Now we're going to move forward with our follow-up session and really have the opportunity to talk more about what does Site 11 look like with the community and the residents that live around that property. And then I want to kind of kick it off to Kurt because he's kind of spearheading this project and I'm here to support and prop him up. So.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me first say clearly, we have a saying that I often use: right shirt, wrong bowling alley. So this community engagement, you know, there was not a lot of concern about the idea of entering into a public-private partnership with a nonprofit organization to provide full synthetic turf field to re-engage the youth in baseball. So we didn't hear a lot of objection to that. The objection was the location. You know, we heard a lot of concerns of noise, light pollution, environmental impact, and the safety and security of the residents that surrounded the Site 11. There was also a theme that we heard that it really commercialized almost the parkland, and that wasn't its intended use. It didn't have the same look, feel, and welcoming tone that a traditional park would have, and that's what residents wanted. And that's why we are changing the narrative now. Why we have such an engaged audience is, okay, if not this, then what? Is what would you like to see Site 11 be? And that's going to be important moving forward. And as Tori mentioned, these engagement sessions, although this particular one was pretty charged, I was thankful that, my integrity, my character was questioned, and there was some audience members that actually stuck up for that, which I appreciated a lot. But we learned so much, not just for this site, but for other sites. And, we know we were awarded the grant for the cricket field. We were looking at Raintree Park, talking with Vindu and getting the particulars of what a full-size cricket field. He said that, really, we can hit the ball 90 yards, and that could end up in John R., so you might want to consider netting. And we said, I said, Vindu, hang on, wait a second. I'm going to go back what we just learned, and that was only 3 days earlier. That's probably not going to be okay with the surrounding residents that we be that intrusive to that park. So we're looking at other locations. Cricket will still happen, I promise you. We're re-looking at bowling, but I wanted to use that as an example of these engagement sessions are so important to how we move forward, how we listen to the community, and we use not only the information for that site, but for other sites as well. So we're excited for this Wednesday to capture this audience and capture what do they want to see out of Site 11. We might not have the means right now, but at least we can capture what they want and as we move forward, incorporate that into any planning process.
Thank you. I don't know if questions are the right thing. I mean, I made some comments over the weekend on social media about all this, and there's a lot of residents here tonight. I'm not sure everyone's heard. Just to be clear, the consensus of the city now is to look at other sites for the baseball facility, league sports. I mean, Site 11 is, I can't say officially it's off the table because I can't do that by myself. But I think from what you've heard, city management, city administration is not looking at that site anymore. And so I want the residents wwho haven't heard that to soak that in for a second, understand where we're coming from. And I'm really appreciative of the community engagement, I would say attempt, but it's more than just an attempt. But that, for your first attempt here in the city of Troy, I mean, it was definitely well attended, and I think everything you've talked about, I think, is important. We've had a history of not having great community engagement in this city, so there's bound to be some things everyone works through as it comes back into play here, or at least starts out. And I thank the two of you especially for going out there and meeting with the residents, because I would love to say that we all could do it all the time, but we can't always do that, and it is an important piece of it. And I do hope that, and I've talked with a few residents at this point about this particular site, and some want nothing to happen there, and I understand that. Some say, it'd be nice if we had some more neighborhood park enhancements. That would be great. I look forward to hearing what comes out of Wednesday evening's community engagement session, with a focus more on what could go there, not what is going to be put there, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions or comments from anybody? Councilmember Hoderick?
Thank you for going on the front lines on behalf of all of us. Appreciate that. And I know, Tori, you're new, but I know your background. Kurt, you've been around a while, and this isn't your first rodeo of dealing with residents when we're proposing something that sounds like a great idea on paper, but when we're actually talking to a neighborhood, learning why it's not good for that particular spot. And for the residents that are watching this, we have a history of listening and revising, and the bike trails that have been going in, what is happening now is not what we were first looking at, and we altered it based on resident feedback. So also, you kind of glossed over, we don't have the means right now. The idea that we could turn around and, let's say Wednesday night, there was a consensus of a grand plan to do X, Y, Z. I'm not even going to put an idea out there because I don't have a preconceived idea. But we as neighbors and a community, we want this. I think we need to be honest. The funding to do something like that, it would join a queue, even if you came up with something that you wanted. We have a parks plan, and this gets to my question. It would be sometime down the road, unless something happened budget-wise or some miracle for parks funding, we're getting pressure to do more in our parks, and our capability to do so from a financial standpoint is stretched, correct?
Correct. The Parks and Recreation Plan that expires in 2025, and we plan on, updating that again for the next 5 years after that. But this particular plan calls for the investment in Sylvan Glen Lake Park. And that investment has been, through grants and through capital funds. One of the reasons why we were interested in League Sports' offer of the public-private partnership, because also the Parks and Recreation Plan calls for that type of investment into the parks, knowing that we don't have the means right now to do full development. So yes, you are correct. But much like a plan, it's good to reference. So you mentioned we'll take those ideas, and if there comes a time where we can fund something like that, at least we have those ideas. I think one thing that we also learned through this engagement session is if it's 20 years from now, we're probably going to have to re-engage the community because the turnover in the neighborhoods. So if it's something that we can do and incorporate in the next 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan, we may be able to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Abraham.
More of a comment. I drive by Site 11 on a very regular basis, and I'm so used to it being an unoccupied, unused parcel of space. And I forget that in 1999, the Troy voters authorized a bond to acquire property to develop as park space, and that was one of those properties. I think if we told Troy voters in 1999 that it would be a generation later that it's still undeveloped, they would be shocked. And while I know the Great Recession certainly delayed many plans, and we still haven't seen the revenues that we've seen since the Great Recession, not on an adjusted basis, on an actual dollar basis, it is something that we have been working on for over 25 years to develop that space when the time is right, when the plans are right, and when the funding is there. And while this great idea that was on paper isn't going to be at Site 11, I'm very pleased to see administration not get daunted by maybe the tone and tenor of some of the conversation, but really dig in, engage the community to understand what makes sense there. We hear consistently that residents enjoy green space. They want more of it. They want more park space, more recreation. And now we have an opportunity to really flesh out what that could look like and plan for it. Like Councilwoman Hoderick said, it's not something that we can immediately fund. But if you plant the seed and the idea with the expectation, we can plan for it, just like we do with our roads, which we can't fix all at the same time, but have a plan for the 5-10 years down the road. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you to the community for coming out. I appreciate the 30 or so folks that came out a couple weeks ago, and thank in advance those that will be coming out, because we really do want to know how we can develop a space that meets all of our needs to the best of our ability. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. Someone else? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have no carryover items this evening, no public hearings, so we'll move on to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have a handful of people signed up this evening. As a reminder to everybody, our rules of procedure are printed in the agenda packet. You're given 3 minutes per comment. It's not a back and forth conversation, so if you ask us a question and you get a bunch of empty faces staring back at you, please know it's not personal, it's just how our rules work. We'll do our best if it's necessary to answer at the allotted time. But again, you have 3 minutes. The clock will be going up here. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when it turns red, your time is up. So please keep that in mind. I will ask you to stop if you're still going at the end of that 3 minutes. So with that said, first up, we have Nikki Jenkins.
Good evening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk about something that's so passionate to myself and to my neighbors. I live in Rain Tree Subdivision, which is directly across from Site 11. You know, and I'll start by saying that when my kids are older now, they went to Troy schools. We moved here for the schools and the green space and the community and the government because we loved what we saw. We've been here, I think, like 27 years now. Things have changed. I know it's hard to get things to pass. My kids always used to say there's nothing to do in Troy. So yes, there needs to be things for kids to do in Troy. I know that Mayor Baker was kind enough to respond to our Nextdoor thread that some people had started. There was quite a passionate conversation going back and forth about some people were educated about it, some were not, some were all passionate about it. You know, shame on me for not knowing some things, like we live directly across from that park. Why did we not get notification? So I'm kind of curious. I just want to put out there, I don't know what the radius is, or if there's some kind of formula you follow when you're notifying residents of what might be coming in their area. So that's concerning. Second of all, you know, I don't think any of us were ever opposed to a park. We love that place. Most of us that have been here many years, our kids played soccer, or that was the only place you could get a soccer field to rent if you were a coach. My husband coached TYSL for a million years. So there's lots of good memories there, and we like it as it is. It's beautiful. We would love to see it developed, but not raised up, filled in, and turned into a commercial place that not everybody in the city could enjoy. So I wish I would have known about the meeting that took place previously. I definitely will be at the one that's coming up because I think there's a lot of ideas out there. But I think, you know, maybe it's just me and I don't look hard enough. I like to think I'm pretty involved. I've been very involved in the community. But I didn't know anything about that meeting, and that's kind of what concerns me. So I know you guys are good at what you do, and we appreciate all you do for the city, but I think that we need a better way to get stuff out, especially maybe our older population that isn't digitally savvy or doesn't come to City Hall to see anything that's posted or doesn't have access to the agendas. I don't remember seeing anything posted in like the Troy Times or anything like that. If I missed it, then that's my bad, but that's just my concern. I know there are a lot of people that are going to be there at the meeting to talk about what we'd like to see in that park, and I think if we were more forthcoming and had come at this sooner where more people knew, there would be a lot more acceptance of it instead of some of the negativity that's come out of it. I'll be the first to admit I was pretty fired up when I heard about it, but you have to like take a step back, right? When you're getting your details from people that you may not know so well, and then just do your own research. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I hope we make the right choice for Troy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate this. Next up is Eric Ornberger.
My name is Eric Hornberger. I live at 1556 Crimson Drive. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I grew up in Pine Knob in Clarkston, Michigan, just a little bit further north, in the Pine Knob North 1 subdivision. It was a mere mile from what has become the Pine Knob Music Theater. Teenage years were pretty rough. Initially, it was all right. Then it got louder, and it got larger, got more popular. There was issues with traffic, and that still exists to this day. Imagine as a junior high kid trying to get to sleep in the summer, windows all open, no air conditioning, so forth, and then have the ruckus of the resounding crescendo at the end of the show, about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and then the traffic noise thereafter. So my concerns specific to Site 11, as I've come to understand by attending here this evening, there's some well-expressed concerns from other residents. I'd like to add my voice to theirs. Further understand that there's a engagement scheduled to exchange ideas and conversation. Make every effort to attend that. The other concern that I'd like to raise is traffic related. From that facility, that location, I believe you only have one egress and one access point. Has anyone thought about a calamity that requires emergency access with people fleeing the other direction? Just a thought. Furtherance with the Pine Knob North 1 situation. Turned out that the traffic was so heavy trying to exit the facility with limited access to exit the facility, the Pine Knob Music Theater, they started cutting through neighborhoods looking for any way to get out, any way to beat the traffic. I suspect that this is going to be very similar if the site proceeds as a public venue for the baseball. So that would be a concern of mine as well. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak with you all and express my concerns. Please have a good evening.
Thank you, sir, for coming this evening. Next up is Ramakrishnan Srinivasan.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council Member and Troy. I want to talk about this 11 John R. And say I'm a Troy resident and I want to sleep very well peacefully without sound pollution. That is the minimum requirement for any Troy resident. They need a very quiet sleep place and good oxygen and very good quiet place for kids. This proposal, definitely it is going to affect everything. And also there is a big trial is going on, and it is 50% of that park is wetland and beautiful park. And it is a good vegetation for so many wildlife. I don't want to remove that place. We want to keep the wildlife that also needs to live in this city. I choose this Troy because of Troy is named as Parkland. Now we are going against that direction. No, we don't want to go for that direction. I want to keep it as very good, beautiful place. That's all I'm looking for. And there is one more very important, it is an oil company pipeline is going on nearby the site. So I don't know whether this city already considered that or not. So we want to, safety is very important. And also there is a school is next, small school. We don't want to invite unwanted disturbance for the school kids. So I strongly oppose any proposal on that site because we want to keep the 50% of the land as a forest as it is, and because of, there is so many wildlife, it needs a vegetation, we want to keep it. They have equal rights to live in this city. That's all. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming forward this evening. Next up is Robert Chapman.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I kind of had a different speech and plan, but recognizing that you're seeing the problems that we were going to have with the previous plan, I want to thank you for recognizing that and hope to have a different kind of a park plan that will be more conducive to a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Well put. Thank you. Sharon Chapman is next.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody on the council for actually listening to us. Many of us were dubious anything was going to be done, and especially Kurt. He listened to us, and he didn't get upset when we got upset, and he held his ground, and we held the ground. But we'd like to see as little as possible done to that area, because we're running out of green, and it just doesn't look nice, and we just would like it to stay green. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chapman. Appreciate you coming forward also. Next up is David Jensen.
Good evening, Mayor Baker, Council. David Jensen, my wife Farah, and I are longtime Troy residents, having lived at 3555 Bellows Court for the last 38 years. That property directly abuts the so-called Site 11. We are just on the east side of that parcel of ground. So we have a vested interest. We were at the community engagement I want to thank you for your information that you shared through social media. And I want to thank Kurt and Tori for the community engagement. I thought they did a fair job in the assessment and the summary that they provided to you all prior to this meeting. And I'm looking forward to participating in the follow-on engagement. A couple of good things have come out already. I got on social media since that was the way some information was communicated, so that was something new, and I've met a lot of good new neighbors, old neighbors actually, through the process. So there's a lot of goodness that comes through the community engagement. I want to thank you for listening and encourage you to keep it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Good luck with that social media. I'm not sure I congratulate you at this point. You might want to reconsider. All right, next up, I have Brad and Liz Edwards signed up together. Did you intend to go separately, or did you just want to stand together? You can come up together. It's fine. You still only get 3 minutes, though. So.
Thank you for listening to us. I guess what we're saying, we just heard about what you were just saying, that they're not looking at that park to be, so we thank you for that.
Yeah, appreciate listening to the residents and what it could have done for, everyone in the area and
Right.
and whatever's done with it that, that all the residents can support.
Agreed.
And that is going to enhance everyone's life and not cause an issue. Appreciate that.
So that's about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Terry McCormick, and I think she's speaking about something different, my guess.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. Just for the record, I'm Terry McCormick, 27-year resident of Troy. My kids all went through Troy schools, and I'm a retired Troy teacher. A little different, but I will give you some additional positivity along with everyone else here. I am here on agenda item I-6, brought forward by Mr. Brunner on the agenda, and I thank him for that. Just to urge you all to please vote on this item positively to set this meeting for September 11th, I believe it is, for the study session for sustainability, whatever it ends up to be. We have, I believe I've told you before that we've got about a dozen or more residents now who have been in and out of this group trying to move the needle on this topic for 4.5 years now. So I look forward to actually getting this rolling. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses this evening. Now's an opportunity for City Council and City Administration response and reply. I did want to ask a quick question going back to just our very first. Could someone speak to what the notification process was for the community engagement? And if that is something, I know we have notification processes for development projects. This is a little different, but community engagement, Tori, maybe you could tell us what the plan is or was and how it works.
Absolutely. So this was stage 1, and so our biggest goal was making sure that we touch the residents that were directly impacted. Given that this was a conceptual, we had a lot more flexibility to kind of expand and breach out. Now that we have transition based off the first feedback session, we are going to be doing more outreach, but it's going to be more of a discussion on just public green space as a whole. So I don't have specifics with you right now, nor do I have that in front of me, but there is an outline for that. We're focused mainly on Site 11 and the neighbors immediately impacted to the neighborhood, and then we're kind of breaking out through it. So we did send letters, that's why, because we knew, one, it was summertime, people go on vacation, hitting before school hitting before school starts again. So vacations, time off, whatever have you. So we were really focused on just getting the neighbors that were immediately abutted, and then we were going to move out and branch out. So that's going to still continue. It's just more of, now that we immediately know what's happening next, we're going to transition and adjust from there. Does that answer your question? Cool.
I would guess that Ms. Jenkins would say it was going to affect my life too, but understandably, I think they focused on that quadrant directly touching the property as a start. And you would have had much more opportunity as if things were to progress.
Yeah, absolutely, which they will. This is
I-
just the start,
that was-
so,
and
yeah.
Social media at some point, I don't know about Troy Times advertising for certain community engagement things, but I can imagine if that was, if it called for it, that would be something.
Yeah, unfortunately, we just didn't have the spacing at the paper.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, that was my question on that. Council comments, reply? I'm stuttering a little bit, reply. Councilmember Hoderick?
Ms. Jenkins, when you were very vulnerable and admitted that you got fired up, you know, I got fired up that people were fired up. If I can be vulnerable back. And then I took a step back, and I remembered being fired up as a resident. Be careful, folks. Next thing you know, you'll be running for council. Just want to put that out there. Met a dear friend in the process via social media. So I just want to be vulnerable back to say, you know, it hurts when any of us are being judged. And we're living in a climate of quick judgment. And I guess I want to applaud you all for the tone you brought to this meeting tonight. The sense that you have that, you know, whether you like us politicians or not, that staff does care. They do want to work to affect what residents want. They are public servants. And the sense of fighting City Hall can sometimes overtake all of us. I've been there, been that person. I know what it feels like to come to that microphone and speak to council. We're just your fellow residents, by the way, you know, no big thing. But for those that step up, it can be extremely nerve-wracking, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. I am sorry you felt the need that you needed to come here, and that the engagement process might not, that you weren't sure you could trust it, right? And that you were being heard. And if I'm being candid, I get that. We had some untrustworthiness going on in the city. And I think there's still some hangover in the community from that. And I get that. I understand. You don't know us. You don't know how hard we've moved on, worked to move on and reestablish integrity. And so maybe the learning really is about that. And the park discussion was just the genesis of maybe you getting to know our city professionals and us, and the fact that I know my colleagues, and speaking for myself personally, it's all about representing the residents to the very best of our ability. Sometimes there's tensions about what some residents want and others want, but we really strive to work that through. Our DPW director knows this city like the back of his hand. And I know that there's concerns sometimes that, gee, have they thought about the engineering, if you will, about the wetlands, about, you know, you all are asking absolutely great questions. There's only one way in and out? Those are the kinds of things that our city staff would look at if we got past kind of a conceptual idea. I'll use development as an example. We can give approval for development, but if it runs into, now that the experts really sit down at the table and look at how this will work, and if it doesn't work, it's got to get revised, or sometimes those plans go by the wayside. The truth is our fire department, our engineer, they can't do that upfront work on a concept that may never see the light of day. Like this one is Site 11, this isn't going to be a logical place for this. So, you know, I guess you all you didn't want to, It wasn't on your to-do list for the summer to get to know us and how we work. And the very fact that we were coming to you first, hey, here's an idea to entertain. Maybe you question if we should have even given direction to entertain it, and that's fair. But I think we had good reason to do so. We were working to entertain it with you and to seek your feedback. And, you know, it's sad to me that there can be so much mistrust in government that the immediate assumption is that we're going to go forward without reflecting input from our residents. As long as I'm sitting here, that's going to be a priority. It's part of the reason we hired the communications engagement we have. We can do better in the city. We should do better. And so I thank you, all of you, for coming out. I appreciate you being candid with checking your emotions. I did some checking myself. And I just want to assure you, in times when everything just seems so divisive and people are so quick to get angry at one another, me included, we're different. The city has evolved and changed, and we're different than what's going on all around us. We're striving to be different. And I appreciate you working with us to help us make a more positive difference in how we proceed in decision-making and evolving the city. That's what we're doing together, and I'm sorry for the tensions, but some of that has to happen for us to get to the logical next steps. Sorry, I don't mean to make a speech. I stayed off of Nextdoor and I stayed off of Facebook because I wasn't sure what would come back at me. And I'm taking a moment to say, hey, we're just your next door neighbors representing you. And our city staff, they work here, they live here, they have family here. We care deeply about getting it right. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Additional council reply, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I want to thank each and every person who came out tonight, whether you spoke or not, the fact that you came to the community engagement session. It makes me think of the news. Many of you, maybe you're watching the news just before you came here, and you know about Maui and what's happening in Maui. I listened to a young woman plead that with the recovery and redevelopment, that the residents are engaged, that the residents get to be a part of designing what the future of Lahaina and that region will look like as it recovers. And I think that actually, it fits exactly what we're talking about tonight, is that residents who live, who are impacted, they get to have a voice and say in what is most around them. When I came to council and wanted to run, this was a big part of it, with something called community-driven development. It was something I was honored to do when I was at the World Bank, when we did big initiatives, that the community came first. The community had a voice in deciding and being able to decide and impact and shape what would come around them. It wasn't for them, it was together with a team of people, a team of residents. Residents get to decide. So again, I am grateful to all of you for being here. It fits, I think, so much us as a council, not to speak for everyone else, but that we value our residents first and your voices. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo my colleagues' comments and thank you all for being engaged and thank you all for speaking out. I didn't engage in Nextdoor, but I read every one of your comments, and you brought up really very important concerns, and that's the point of why we were doing the community engagement. I was speaking with Tori and Kurt before the meeting, and they expressed that they felt like that community engagement session was a success, because what happened during that session is you were able to voice your concerns, perhaps a little more passionately than we would have liked to have seen, but you did it. You spoke from the heart. You spoke honestly about your concerns, and I think that's why we're doing the community engagement. I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad we're moving forward in the way that we are. And I hope that, as Councilmember Hoderick was saying, that we can continue to rebuild some of the trust that has been lost over the years. We have been working really hard on becoming a trustworthy body for you, and hope that will continue. And just wanted to also thank Terry for coming out and speaking about sustainability. I too am very excited and looking forward to our study session. It's a very important issue. I want the city to move forward with it, and I think that this will be a really good first step. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Additional comments? There's been a lot said that I agree with, and I just want to add, I've been saying for about 6 or 7 years, you want to get community involvement, propose a controversial development project in their neighborhood. All of a sudden, everybody in the city knows what's going on at City Hall. Our McClure friends know, right? You've been there, right? And I say that, of course I'm kidding, but it is, the bright side to a lot of this for me is, one, obviously, we've learned a lot about this process. We've learned a lot about this site. I hate calling it Site 11, to be honest. That sounds like it sounds silly to me, but I understand it gets referred to as Site 11. But I hope that some of the residents who hadn't been particularly involved in what's going on lately in the city, but who care very deeply, are more interested now and look for ways to be more involved and to see what's going on. Not because you have to worry about what's happening in this building, but because it is a city that you love and you care, and there is it's a public meeting, it's open, and there's ample opportunity to do so. So that is a positive that comes out of this. I do think the concept of having residents who live near that area go out on Wednesday evening again and speak with Tori and Kurt about what could potentially happen there, which again, may be very minimal things. One, because that's the way it should be kept, or two, because for financial reasons. But what could happen, that's a great opportunity. And it is, I saw some comments on Nextdoor, which is dangerous, but a couple of us live over on in that general area. Some of us don't, right? And there's always the sensitivity of, yeah, well, if the mayor was doing this, and if this was being proposed and the mayor's next door to his house, right? And it's an easy thing to throw out online, but I get it. Councilmember Hoderick talked about the bike paths and the trails. Fully guilty. In 2015, right before I was running for council, some of the early proposals for the trails were to run right through my neighborhood. And as the president of my HOA, we were up in arms about it. And I was very vocal about it. And people were so excited when I got elected. They were, but it makes a difference, right? I mean, that is how it's supposed to happen. And unfortunately, sometimes it does take a little bit of friction to get your attention, I guess, and to have people get involved. But every time it's happened, I see really good things that come out of it, I guess is my point. So I'm really thankful for those of you that weighed in online, that weighed in here this evening, who came, have been paying attention. And ultimately, I think our community is only better and stronger when more of us are paying attention and getting actively involved in what happens, because we make up our community, each and every one of us. So thank you for coming tonight, and look forward to hearing what comes up of Wednesday evening's discussion as well. All right. There are no postponed items, so we move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. Mayoral appointments are first. City Clerk Dixon, were you able to, I had nominated a gentleman for the LDFA at the last meeting, but I'm not sure he put in his resume, his application.
We have not received it yet.
Okay, so I'm not going to take action on that tonight, and could you, well, I'll reach out to him and let him know he needs to submit that application. So with that said, I don't have any mayoral appointments this evening. So we move on to city council appointments. We do have a couple. I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the reappointments of David Haight and Ann Sacrison to the Personnel Board for the terms expiring April 30th, 2026.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve the the appointments of David Haight and Ann Sacrison to the Personnel Board for the terms expiring April 30th, 2026. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. We thank the two of them for their service. That concludes city council appointments this evening. We move on to I2, board and committee nominations. I have no mayoral nominations this evening, but I understand there's some city council nominations, so I'll turn it back over to Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the renominations of Timothy Folker and Anya Shaw to the Parks and Recreation Board for the terms expiring both July 31st, 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the renominations of Timothy Fulcher and Anya Shaw as both the Troy School District representative and student representative to the Parks and Recreation Board. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries. Would someone in the back mind just asking them to hush down a little bit? Gotta keep the doors open, but sorry, it echoes. Yeah, I can't close the doors, so I don't want to, which is usually the first thing people do. But all right, next up is I3. We have no closed session requested this evening, so we'll move on to I4, contract ratification, Michigan Association of Police, MAP, and that'll be introduced by our Human Resources Director, Jeanette Minnick. Good evening, Jeanette.
Hi, Mayor and Council. I'm here this evening to introduce the tentative agreement we've reached with the Michigan Association of Police. That group represents clerical employees throughout the city and our non-sworn police service aides in the police department. The highlights of the agreement are restructured pay ranges and classifications, wage increases each of the 2 years, a one-time lump sum payment in the first year, increased shift premiums for both afternoons and midnight shifts, and the addition of the optional enhanced dental program that we've been rolling out to other groups. And of course, significant amount of administrative language. There were a lot of attachments if you scrolled through. We did a lot of work. So city administration definitely recommends that you support and ratify this agreement with MAP. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Jeanette? All right, Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I4, contract ratification, Michigan Association of Police, MAP, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle, that we approve I4, contract ratification, Michigan Association of Police, MAP, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Just thank you to administration for all your hard work, and of course, thank you to the MAP representatives and team for coming to an agreement. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is I5, City of Troy Master Plan, release draft master plan for public review. That'll be introduced by our Community Development Director, Brent Savana, and I also see Ben Carlisle here from Carlisle Wortman. Good evening.
Good evening, just waiting for the PowerPoint to load.
That's the title of your book, Brent.
There we go, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Baker, City Council. As you indicated, Mayor Baker, with me this evening is Ben Carlisle from Carlisle Wortman Associates, our planning consultant, and Carlisle Wortman Associates has done a really great job of helping us update our draft master plan. I was thinking before the meeting that we started this project, in fact, we approved the scope of this project at about the worst time in my career to start a master plan project, which is during COVID. And so we had some challenges, and it's just looking back, it seems like it was so far in the rearview mirror, and it's taken a while, but we're here. You know, the finish line is within sight. So just to summarize the update, it was never intended to be a comprehensive update. It was to be a focused amendment, and we wanted to focus on a few things. We wanted to look at refreshing the look of the document, the layout, the font. Wanted to strengthen the master plan introduction to really explain to the people using the document how it ties to zoning. Wanted it to be somewhat of a primer for planning and zoning. We wanted to update the graphics and the information. I think the document looks really good. And in terms of substantive changes, the focus was really on reviewing the neighborhood nodes. That was the topic that seemed to garner the most pushback from residents. So that was really our focus in terms of the heavy lifting for the document. So we did a lot of different things for the neighborhood node. The Planning Commission established a steering committee. They worked diligently on updating the intent statement, updating the node language. They ended up removing 6 of the nodes from the neighborhood node map, and we updated the nodes that remained. We created 2 concept plans, 2 of them for indicating how 2 of the nodes could be potentially developed, and also creating a gateway concept for a node that is on the border of a neighboring community. There was a special meeting June 26th. I missed it because my flight visiting my parents was canceled, and I was left scrambling like trains, planes, and automobiles to get here. I missed the meeting, but Ben did attend the meeting, and he can answer any specific questions related to that. But reviewing the minutes, talking to members of staff and Ben who attended the meeting, coming out of the meeting, the focus in terms of next steps for us was to fix typos and outdated information in the plan, provide an executive summary for the document, revise the future land use plan. I'll get to that in a second. And there was also some issues discussed that were really related to zoning ordinance amendments in the future, and I'll get to that as well in two new slides. So in terms of the future land use plan, the current document has this boundary here. This is Alpine and McClure. This is Big Beaver between Crooks and Coolidge. The current Big Beaver classification is further north here. It's up here. And there was discussion at the study meeting to bring that boundary down, and it would basically be, this line here would be the northernmost point of the property that fronts on Big Beaver. That change was recommended during the study meeting, and we revised this, the future land use plan. We provided the council a copy with that document today, and if a majority of city council wishes to add this to the draft, we certainly can do that and move it forward with this as a part of that draft. So next steps, if city council agrees by resolution, they can resolve to release the master plan for distribution for the 63-day public review period that's required by law. At the end of the 63-day review period, and I should have mentioned, when we released it, it would be sent to Oakland County, to SEMCOG, to all abutting communities, to utility companies, railroad companies, et cetera. All of the organizations were required by law to release it to. During that 63-day review period, it can be reviewed by the public. They can make comments on it, et cetera. It would come back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing on the master plan amendment. The Planning Commission would make a recommendation to City Council on that document, and it would come back before City Council again for consideration in the future. I drew that red line there because if the master plan is amended by City Council, this process would be over for 5 years or less, depending on the will of City Council. But once we amend the master plan, we could then start working on some of the zoning ordinance issues that have been identified by City Council as supported by the master plan. So the sooner that we can amend the document, the sooner we can start on some of the amendment efforts for the zoning ordinance. And with that, Ben and I we went back and forth on how to divvy up presenting 6 slides and we determined that I would present all of them, but he's here and he can answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent and Ben. Yeah, any questions from council? Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you very much for addressing the issues on the Big Beaver corridor, especially Alpine and McClure. We do have some residents who live in that area who are here tonight, so I know this is of special concern to them. One quick question that I did have is, if we do release this to the public, where is the best way that the public can review this and provide feedback? Will it be on our website, or what are the means of releasing this to the public?
So we will provide numerous opportunities for the public to engage different ways. Traditionally, what we've done is have draft copies available for review at the planning department counter as well as the library, but we've got a new engagement person who spoke earlier this evening, who's excellent. She's got all kinds of ideas. She's already worked on some videos. We're going to make it available online through social media. We will roll out a whole plan of how people can review the document, how they can give us comments, and we'll make those details known.
Great, thank you.
Can I just follow, when in this process is that portion of the public engagement? Meaning, let's say it gets released tonight. Is it during the 63 days that our public is having an opportunity?
Yeah. So next steps for me and my department would be, let's say just for argument's sake, it's the resolution's passed this evening to release it. The next step would be sending letters to all those organizations I referenced. Then Tori is waiting to, with bated breath, to start that process. So it would be in the very near future, okay. Like within a week.
Okay. Councilmember Hoderick.
Your suggestion of including the revised Big Beaver boundary, appreciate that. We were just talking about representing residents. We don't need to do an engagement session to know there's a whole pile of residents that are expecting that we will do that. Do we need to do an amendment to the resolution to release it with that change, or do you just need consensus of council to how do we make sure that happens? I'm trying to do my job here on behalf of our residents.
I would defer to your city attorney, but it seems to me that the only difference between where it seems like you're going is there seems to be support for releasing the document as was provided to you earlier, with the exception that the future land use plan would be the one that was submitted to you today. So that would have to be as part of the resolution. But I defer to Ms. Bloom.
City Attorney Bloom.
I'm not sure that I can state it any better than what Mr. Savanant has stated. Certainly, I think it is appropriate for you to have some clarification that it does incorporate the revised master plan document, which was presented to you this evening. So it would be incumbent to put that in the resolution and before it is released.
Okay, so let's continue with any questions that we have now, and then if we need to make a motion to amend, we'll do that. Any additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that we're talking about zoning ordinance amendments. Those, can happen after the process, some may during the process. So just as a reminder, going back to the neighborhood nodes, the ones taken out need to be rezoned. And I just had the thought, and I don't have it in front of me, the future land map. What does it look like then and for those places if we don't know what those areas will be zoned as? How would those be marked in the future land map?
So in the zoning ordinance.
Well, there's a future zoning, and we're taking out, and I'm presuming this is in this huge document sent to us on Friday, is you had the future land map, and if we took out some of those that that were, so it's that, but you
I
had.
think they're already taken out in the one they
So they are taken out, and what are they moved to? Because my understanding is we need to figure out what some of those will be rezoned to, and that will take
Yeah.
some time.
We're going to go back with the Planning Commission and discuss all those nodes. But it's going to, the reclassification of those for the zoning ordinance will be based on the master plan, as well as what they were zoned prior to them being rezoned nodes in 2011. So it'll be considered on a case-by-case basis, but the master plan is going to guide us.
And is it the subcommittee that worked on those nodes as a part of Planning Commission? They're going to deep dive on that?
It might be because they did the deep dive initially. I think that's probably the best suggestion is for the steering committee to get involved again, roll up their sleeves. I don't imagine it would take that long, maybe one or two meetings, and then we could bring them back to the Planning Commission, make their report, and get support from the Planning Commission for that. But that's going to be a priority.
Other quick question, because resident engagement is top of mind for us tonight, is wondering if any of those public sessions, because you held sessions where residents could come to the nodes and give feedback. Do you know if there was feedback on the ones that we've taken out, that then some of that feedback can be helpful to helping the subcommittee on Planning Commission kind of deep dive and figuring out the future of those nodes?
So as I understand your question,
was there any resident engagement that we think was helpful? I don't know if you went to those particular nodes that were taken out. And hoping that there is something that you could refer to from resident engagement that could help inform the Planning Commission subcommittee. So wondering if you have any notes or anything from those public engagement sessions.
so nothing comes to mind right now specifically, but I will say that we did walkthroughs of 6 nodes with the Planning Commission and I think 3 nodes with City Council, if memory serves me correctly, and we had a really excellent turnout. A lot of the feedback that we got from residents during those walkthroughs was incorporated into what is in the draft. So we've already kind of listened to the neighbors, but again, the master plan is going to provide us with the background and the justification for making the amendment for the zoning ordinance. So it was very helpful.
I see Ben's got some.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thank you. We have retained and have copious notes from those walkthroughs with both the public as well as the city council. We will certainly review those as part of the future rezoning of those potential ones that we took out. And specifically, the ones on Long Lake, Rochester, and specifically Rochester and Livernois. During the walkthrough, when we did the study of those, we were crossing the street and said, with the base on the traffic volume and the boulevard, et cetera, this doesn't envision what we intend for the neighborhood node. So from a direct discussion as part of the engagement with the public, it was realized that let's pull this out of the node and rezone it to what's more appropriate. So there was a lot of discussion and evidence through that engagement session that those really shouldn't be nodes, and we have a good sense of what we think they should be in the future. But again, that will go through the engagement process and the Planning Commission process as well.
Perfect.
So, thanks.
Excellent. One small, tiny question. The executive summary, that's new, is that correct? To this master plan draft that we looked at?
That's since the...
Yeah, so based on the discussion, there was it's a long document. We all agree it's a long document, and so and there's been subsequent changes since it was first adopted, and so one of the directions from the last meeting was add an executive summary to note what the changes have been since it was first adopted 15 years ago. So that has been added to it, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kringa. Additional questions? Councilmember Hodrick, did you want to take a stab at making a motion to amend?
Sure, I've
I
been
figured.
over here trying to scribe an amendment. Thank you, Mayor. I will move I-5 City of Troy Master Plan, release draft master plan. Well,
You have to make a motion to amend first. Am I? I'm looking at both of you.
can I propose read this and just add the sentence?
Because it hasn't been moved yet, you can read it with your included language that you wanted to add, and I'll record it.
Okay.
My apologies.
No, that's okay. Thank you to our city clerk for helping us stay in order. Okay, let me start over. I'd like to move I-5, City of Troy Master Plan, release draft master plan for public review. Resolved that Troy City Council hereby approves the distribution of the draft master plan as per the requirements of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, PA 33 of 2008, as amended, with an additional amendment to substitute the future land use map for the Big Beaver District that was provided to us tonight at the table.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-5 City of Troy Master Plan, release draft master plan for public review as read into the record and recorded by the city clerk. Discussion? Councilmember Hoderick?
It occurs to me that the executive summary may not currently reflect that change, which isn't insignificant for our residents. Or maybe you are mentioning it in the executive summary, I can't remember.
We did not mention the executive summary because we weren't sure of the direction of this council.
Right.
We can certainly add a sentence into that to reflect that recommendation and include that in the draft if that's what the direction of the council is.
You know, for the hundreds that paid attention to this, if they were to just peruse the executive summary, at least it would be reflected in there without them having to dive into the deep pages of the master
Certainly.
plan. So, do we need to?
Need to revise the,
Now you would need to propose an amendment to the amendment, yes.
you want to do it? Or you want me to try? All right.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to amend I-5 to include additional language in the executive summary that references the change to the future land use plan as it relates to the Big Beaver District.
Support.
All right, moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve the amendment to I-5 as just read into the record. Any discussion on the amendment? The vote, Ms. Dixon, on the amendment.
This is on the amendment that you just proposed.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
And now you'd need to vote on the first amendment that you made. If it fails, then it would just automatically be the second one that you just passed, just so you know. Because there's one, you have a motion right now that is an amendment that's sitting there.
Okay.
And it needs to be addressed. So you would have to vote on the amendment that you just amended. If that makes any sense.
Voting on the amendment that we just
Yeah.
amended. And
So
then- okay, no, I don't understand. I'm sorry.
The first amendment
Yeah.
that you just proposed, the first amendment that was proposed is still sitting there.
Correct.
You just voted to amend that, but you have to vote on the amendment. I know.
Is that the only vote, or then you're telling?
Then you'll have to vote on the original motion that,
Who's laughing in city staff?
right.
I don't think that's right, because we didn't actually amend the
Right.
first I-5. We proposed
It
a whole
was-
new I-5, and then we just amended it. So don't we just have one
Correct.
pending resolution left?
Yes.
You're the
Then-
expert, and I
then
recognize
it's-
that, but
So, you're right. So the motion that's sitting there right now is the one that was read into first, yeah. So you have to vote on that one as, with the
Amended
amendment that
just
was
now.
brought forward, yeah. That
Okay.
second one,
okay.
with the,
So pending right
Executive
now is
summary.
I-5, including the amended future land map, plus the language for the executive summary, because we just amended it.
this will
right?
be with the executive summary part in it,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Parliamentarianism is fun. so.
Right. Then we're on discussion for that, for I-5. Any further discussion? I just want to say I'm thankful that we're moving forward in this process, assuming this passes. I thank you both and everybody involved for all the work that's been done, especially the Planning Commission. I know they really did a lot of the heavy lifting. It was their primary objective for the past couple years in many ways, other than everything else they do. And I thank you for, even though you couldn't attend, but the special study session we had, I think it did a lot for us and gave us an opportunity, and I'm thankful we're moving forward, so thank you. All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is I-6, 2023 City Council meeting schedule. That'll be introduced by Deputy City Manager Robert J. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hopefully this resolution will be a little easier to craft. At the last City Council meeting, Council expressed a desire to schedule a special meeting to talk about sustainability. I want to thank all of you who responded to the email very quickly. We were able to land on a date. It looks like September 11th at 6 p.m. prior to the regular meeting at 7:30 will work for everybody, and so that is presented for your consideration tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-6, 2023 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, that we approve I-6, 2023 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Motion carries. We'll add that meeting to our calendar. Next up is the consent agenda. Regular business is concluded. Anyone like to pull any items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda this evening, they have all been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items to announce this evening. So next we'll move on to public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have 3 people signed up, but one of them has taken off his name. So first up is Divya Jain Mujumdar. I apologize for the pronunciation. I'm sure I did not do it justice.
Good evening and namaste, Troy City Council members and Mr. Mayor. I'm a Troy resident. I'm not here to discuss any contentious issue, but just to invite you for an event. Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangha, HSS, is a 501c3 voluntary nonprofit social, educational, and cultural organization. Our vision is world peace through dharma. Our mission is to organize a diverse and vibrant Hindu-American society that can collectively address its challenges and contribute to the welfare of the world. HSS conducts regular value-based education programs for children, youth, and adults through more than 220 branches nationwide. We also organize service activities and community outreach projects. Through our regular educational programs based on Dharma, we instill and promote discipline, self-confidence, teamwork, and the spirit of selfless service. Keeping our mission in mind and keeping the relevance of it, we have a beautiful festival of Raksha Bandhan, which is coming up on August 31st of 2023. Raksha Bandhan creates the sense of universal oneness and can help build a cohesive society of tolerance and peace. Raksha Bandhan symbolizes a spirit of brotherhood and harmony amongst all sections of the society, irrespective of race, religion, and color. On this auspicious occasion, we inspire ourselves with the true spirit of service and sacrifice for the welfare of society and find therein the highest spiritual fulfillment of human life. So I'm a volunteer of HSS. We call ourselves a Swayam Sevika in Sanskrit. I want to invite all of you to try to celebrate Raksha Bandhan with us. And this will take place from 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. at Bullen Park on August 27th. The celebration involves tying a thread on the hands of officers by our volunteers. This thread is a commitment of Raksha, which means protection and security, that our city officers are committed to provide us. In return, we as residents of Troy City and of the USA commit to abide by law and being dutiful citizens. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all. I'll leave my information with the public relations officer here. You can reach out to me. I'll leave my phone number and email ID. Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. Next up will be Edward Kempen.
Well, thank you, Mayor Baker and Council. It's been a while since I've been up at the podium here, but it's nice to be back. I did announce my candidacy for City Council in November, and just want to say that I'm going to have a whole different approach in this round. It's been over a decade since I've run for council, and have some feedback from the community. I've been out talking to the members of the community. Site 11, of course, was one of my first topics, but it seems like that is resolved. It's still open, but we'll be attending that session on Wednesday with further feedback. I've also been spending a lot of time over at the community center. I do have some concerns with that and how it's being utilized. It is both overutilized in the gym space and underutilized pretty much everywhere else. And it's kind of sad because that was a major investment in our community. I think that there's a lot of opportunities that we could look at to bring more value to the community out of that space. Some of the other issues I'm looking at is more of a cooperation between our homeowners associations here in Troy, looking to get some sort of synergies going so that we can share best practices and things like that and how to manage those. I've done a lot of research myself since becoming treasurer of my own homeowners association, and I just found out you have a role in that as well, and there's a lot of other people, and it's very fragmented. And because they connect up, there's a lot of opportunity to cooperate. And got a few other things, but I will save them for future comments as well. And I just want to say thank you all. I look forward to working with you in the future, assuming the electors bring the right people together. And I do respect all of you up here. I know how tough it is. I've been behind on that side as well on a few of the committees and boards. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes those who have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses this evening. There's an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to respond or reply. Just again, thank you both for coming forward this evening. Appreciate the invitation and appreciate the comments as well. There are no council referrals this evening, so we move on to reports. Anybody have any comments on the reports this evening? They're good. Councilor Roderick?
I appreciate the follow-up. I'm not sure which item it, the signage update, O2A, really appreciate the city team following up with the details there, given our discussion a couple weeks ago. Thank you.
Sorry, took a sip of water. Usually you talk a little bit longer, Ellen, so caught me off guard. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krango.
Thank you, Mayor. I also have a couple questions regarding that, that same report. And yes, thank you for the quick follow-up on it. Just wondering, there's different details of different kind of signs that will be replaced, including for the parks, and kind of just wondering why those park locations were selected, because obviously the proposal is not to do all the parks, but certain parks. So just kind of wondered the thinking on that.
Ask Kurt to address that. Thanks.
Good evening again. So we only specifically looked at those parks have signs. We do have some parks that don't have signs, but really don't have a great location or an entrance, if you will, to be able to, like, as an example, Schroeder Park off of Beach. There's really no place good place to put a sign like that. So the effort was to celebrate our investment into the parks, some of the improvements that we have. Council's approved a lot of, as I think on our last report for the Parks and Recreation Plan, kind of celebrate those refreshed play structures, those investments. So the community facilities might take a little bit different look, and we want the opportunity to really look at, is that park design a good place or sign, good design for the nature center or for the golf courses or some of the other city facilities that share the wood carved look sign.
Okay, so it would be that some would have this more modern look and some will still have the old. Like, for example, the Troy Farm Park I see is not on the list, so they'd have the old one as well as the nature center, is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. Even though the farm is in the Parks and Recreation Plan along with the Nature Center, along with those other facilities, but it's not a traditional park, if you will, so that's why we chose to leave the farm out of the park signs.
Okay, and if we feel that we're getting feedback that we do need to do all of them, we can come back to you and have that conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. The nice thing about how we'll write the bid specifications, because this is something that will have to be formally bid, is we'll be able to add any additional signs to it. So the fabrication of the signs will be a set price. It's very minuscule to the price, whether it's based on location or the actual printing of the sign, what goes on the sign. So at a later time, absolutely. And council is going to see that again when we come back for a recommendation for award. So at that time, if council decides to add additional signs, we'll make sure that we reserve an additional pricing for future signs, if you will.
Excellent, okay. Final question, I'm reading the boundary identification signs. Those are all the ones around as you enter Troy. The plan is to put the recent logo on that.
That is correct.
That's correct, okay. Personally, I'm not sure I would put the logo on, just as I see other communities often, and I live right in the corner of Troy, so I constantly pass through other municipalities and often just see Birmingham city limit. Very, but at this point, I want to see change, and if this is what it takes, happy to do that. But also I know there was some conversation as to whether we need a refresh in the branding, and I hate to put up something that we may need to change later. But, I'm happy to move forward. That's the important thing.
Fortunately, the 21 signs, they're being fabricated in-house with our sign shop. So if at any point in the near future we decide to change those again, it's not something that we'll have to bid out. It's something that we can do in-house. And as you can see, we're giving ourselves a 2-month timeline to complete that project. I personally think it'll probably be done by the end of September, but I wanted to give our sign shop enough time in case anything comes up. So if council does decide to change those in the future, we can change those very quickly.
Thank you. Any other, questions about the reports while Kurt's up here as it relates to signs, or any comments on the reports in general? I don't think so. Okay, thank you. Next up are council comments. This always makes me laugh. I think we need to change the name of that because it seems like all we do is comment, but, right? I mean, I'm just being honest. It's always something that's interesting. New comments, how about that? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Karanga?
I do have something, so I'd share with the mayor before. We've been seeing a lot of feedback from residents around JC Park. People trying to cross it. There's even been an accident some other folks can speak to. And I know that we do a weekly Q&A where we can send questions from residents and ourselves to city staff. And I believe what I read is that, and it wasn't clear to me, that they are already engaging OHM, but I think also the comment from the city engineer was that if there was consensus, so I don't know if there needs to be some kind of consensus, there could be a report placed on the 9/11 agenda to look at what it would mean to do something to just create more pedestrian safety in terms of crossing at JC Park from Long Lake. So is that something that, Bob, we need consensus from to have that on the agenda?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me right now.
I can speak to
Do you have that?
actually,
yeah. Thanks.
So actually, based on the council comment that we got in the last week Q&A, OHM will be re-engaged. They were already re-engaged since we had just looked at that issue in May of 2022. But based on the two comments that have gone through, we will be re-engaging OHM. And if council would like a report on this re-engagement with OHM and any additions that they have from the 2022 study, we can, based on your direction, we can have that on the next agenda.
So I would like that very much.
Okay.
I think there's consensus for that, right? I mean, we did talk briefly about this right before the meeting started. I understand that there's substantial issues involved in adding, whether it's a mid-block crossing, even though that's such a big road, or whatever that is, and the access for pedestrian, but which means there's substantial cost potentially. I'm supportive at this point of further pursuing that and looking at capital planning for such a thing and all that goes into that. I think it's a shame that it's more difficult for the residents just to cross from that park and that beautiful trail to either have to walk long distances down to the major mile roads to cross at a crosswalk or essentially drive across the street to the park just to use the trail. It doesn't seem consistent with what our planning has been for these trails, for the parks, and for public safety and for movability and walkability and all those things. But I do understand that there's budgetary consequences to something like that, but I would be very interested in seeing if that is something we could incorporate in future budgeting.
All right.
Just as a heads up. Additional council comments? I'll be honest, I was thinking about side 11 and some other things for tonight. I didn't think if there's anything else I wanted to specify this evening, which is not like me, but I don't think so. So we don't have anybody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy, and we don't have a closed session this evening. So with that, we are adjourned.